Certainly with the situation going on with the COVID-19, the coronavirus situation, things are changing rapidly, not just with the virus situation as it is now, but the big question too, that no one can answer accurately with any kind of accurately, is what's our world going to be like when this is all over? So right now it is only March 19th. So in a week or two, this interview will undoubtedly be replaced with another one. But we're going to be talking about the nature of work, which is a challenge for everybody to find a job nowadays, and in this situation particularly, and even more so for people who are over 50 years old. If you need a job, continue a career, or maybe even keep your job. So the guest finally that you are seeing on your screen is Bob Foley. I'm going to share with you a view of his LinkedIn page. Bob has right now is an executive career and retirement coach at Legacy Transitions, but he has an extensive background in HR as Chief Talent Officer for the Pyramid Hotel Group, President and CEO of Travelodge Hotels. He was President and CEO of the Educational Institute of the American Hotel and Lodging Association, VP of Human Resources for La Quinta, and on and on and on. So what we are going to be talking about is the state of work for people over 50 in these myriad of situations, because it's changing even before the virus. Now it's changing anymore. So at this date, at this point in time, Bob, I mean, give us the high altitude view of how radically things are already changing again.
Well, we're right in the middle of companies trying to decide how they're either going to hold on to employees or how long they're going to furlough them for. And is the furlough something that's going to become permanent or not? And it's very much like 2008, but where it's unlike 2008 is people are being asked to go home and stay there. So it's really starting to affect people from the standpoint of when they go home, at first that's okay, but then day after day, they're starting to get closet fever. They can call one another. They're not really seeing people. We're really a society that's very tribal, and it's used to meetings and groups and things like that. And we're all being sent into our individual corners. And with that, isolation starts to creep in, depression starts to creep in, and people start to lose really some of their self-esteem. So you take all that in combination, and then you have your livelihood moved on you. And what starts to happen is you start to feel as though there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to go. And of course, if you watch anything on media, it's all negative. And it's all about the coronavirus virus 24/7. I saw today that the unemployment claims are up over 200,000 over last week. So we're headed for a bumpy, rocky time. However, with every bumpy, rocky time, there is opportunity. And where some of the opportunities is first of all in the healthcare business, of course, because that's where the whole action is. But when you take a look at that and you say to yourself, how do I reskill myself and get in to the healthcare business? Well, there's a tremendous demand for, first of all, home helpers to go in to homes and to assist the elderly in some of their day-to-day activities. And to get certified to be a home health person, it really only takes about 2.5 weeks. The course itself costs somewhere around $2,500. And if you are a dislocated worker, if you've been laid off, if your company is closed, if you've been furloughed, whatever the reason, you qualify. And you can get a grant, not a loan, a grant up to $4,000 that will pay for this certification program. And then once you get that certification, then you can become a home health aide.
Now, I want to interrupt you there, because that's a very good point. But this is not exclusive to being a home health care worker. In other words, I have heard that there are and Google searches and other things are great for this. There are all kinds of certification courses, even extension courses from universities and community colleges and the such that are out there to be had, and some of them, especially for people at various older ages, 50 plus, 60 plus, whatever, are low cost, if not free. So, I mean, in other words, beyond even healthcare, certainly in healthcare, but beyond healthcare, there are a lot of these possibilities if you've lost your job, or you think you're going to lose your job, or you just go ahead and know that you need to pivot. Is that essentially correct, what I just said?
There's over 4,000 separate certification programs that you can get either through national associations or through community colleges, as you mentioned, or colleges. Sometimes adult education programs have them. So where the opportunity is that you can take a look, you go on Google and just search certification programs, and thousands of them come up, but refine the search into areas of interest to yourself, and you'll start to find that there is a whole world out there that you can possibly take advantage of. And many of these jobs that these certifications prepare you for, you can do from the home. You don't have to leave. So that's kind of a twofold kind of thing. Just to get back to the home health side, you know, they say that within the next 10 years, there's going to be 750,000 less food workers, food servers. But they have a demand for over 6 million home health aides. So I think what we're going to start at, and the average wage or the average yearly salary for a food server is about $25,000 to $30,000, and that's exactly what a home health aide pays on a national average. And if that's not enough, if you need more money than that, say you want to make $45,000, $50,000 a year, you can again get one of these grants, and you can get a LPN license, and you can become a limited practical nurse and work in a hospital, work in a assisted living or nursing home or wherever. But there's a whole world out there that if you open yourself up to it, what you'll find is you'll find nuggets, because 90% of the population is going to stay at home and feel sorry for themselves. But if you get out there, get aggressive, and put your mind to it, what you'll find is you'll find your way through the forest and back into the great garden.
Well, a very good point, because we don't know where this is going. Any kind of predictions are going to be way off and aren't qualified. But it does certainly seem, if I pull back to high altitude, like on the moon, our world is going to be very different when we come out of this thing. And certainly a lot of jobs are going to be in jeopardy, and people watching this range from that food service worker to even a top executive. And, you know, I really do think about Wayne Gretzky, the great hockey player's quote, when somebody said, what was it about you that made you so successful? And he said, well, most players go to where the puck is. I always went to where the puck was going. And we have to be thinking about the fact that even if you still have your job, I would imagine that that job may not be there, or circumstances may be such that you really do need to be spending this time to at least develop the mindset and be aware of the resources to be prepared to go elsewhere or skill up. Your perspective on that?
You know, after every recession, corporate America always reevaluates itself. And something that was absolutely set in stone all of a sudden goes away. And I think what you're going to see over the next several months is people getting used to working out of the home. And a lot of industry all of a sudden breaking down those barriers and saying, maybe it's okay for certain people to work out of the home. And not only is it okay, but it starts to answer a lot of the social issues that a lot of employees have right now, especially the millennial generation, on things like childcare, on things like caring for elderly parents, on things just in your normal course of business. I mean, do you have to spend an hour and a half commuting one way and then the other? And all these things are time wasters. So if you can begin your day in your home at 8 o'clock in the morning and go right through, say, till 6 o'clock at night, taking time out here and there with the kids, or with your parents, or whatever. I think we have a real opportunity here right now to really change the thought process of where work is centric, and is that important to that particular industry or job or not. The other side of it is that there's going to be a lot of change, tremendous amount of change, and there'll be resistance to change. And the worst thing that you can do is be resistant to change, because if you embrace the change, if you move towards wherever everything is going, you're going to be seen as a person of value, and not only a person of value, but a person that is willing to lead and get things done.
Well, you brought up 2 points here. One is the gig economy, which could really blossom, is already blossoming. We'll come to that in a moment. But what you also just said, and you and I, Bob and I, have been working on some online training to help people over 50 find a job. To both, well, quite frankly, most of the information is good for anyone in this day and age. It's just a different animal to try to find a job than what many people presume, and to actually walk people through exactly how to put yourself forward compared to everybody else who might have just as good a resume as you have, and resumes aren't what it's all about now. But also you hit on another thing, and that's being up to date and showing that you're up to date and savvy. And so that's kind of the point that you ended with there, that especially for those of us that are over 50, it's now almost a matter of survival, whether it's to find a job or to stay skilled up or to even keep your job, to maybe use this period of time in which we're going to be largely self-quarantining to one degree or another, to really make sure you're up to speed and you're up to date on things, correct?
One of the biggest mistakes that people 50 plus make is they start referring to themselves as elderly, as old. They start telling stories about the good old days.
Seniors.
Right, exactly.
Okay, boomer. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And what they do is they call attention to the fact that they do have gray hair. They call attention to the fact, and they date themselves. And what happens is, all of a sudden, this little mark appears on their forehead which says expiration date at 65. So one of the biggest things that I really emphasize with clients is that they need to get into the flow of what's going on, listen to the way people are communicating, listen to the phrases that they're using, and use those phrases themselves. Now, the next thing is to pick out a couple people that you work with who are, say, younger, and start to become not antagonists to them, but mentors to them, because mentoring works both ways. There's a tremendous colleague who started I don't know what the right term is. Well, he started this academy down in Mexico, and he was a hotelier. He owned a very famous hotel group in San Francisco. And what he does is he puts on these modern elder academies. And what a modern elder academy teaches you to do is to enlighten and mentor millennials, and then flip it around and have millennials train you in whatever knowledge that they have. So what that does is it breaks down all these combative feelings that a number of companies have generational, and people start to see each other as colleagues rather than as adversaries. So one of the biggest things that he has found through this whole thing is that companies become stronger because their decision making then has been truly vetted generationally, ethnically, and also from the standpoint of the way people view the world. And people start to break down, and the baby boomers don't get the "oh boomer" from the millennials, and the boomers don't refer to the millennials as those kids, and that becomes something that's very that really makes the workplace much more professional, and gives a lot more positive energy.
Well, in practical terms, and especially focusing on what people over 50 can be doing now to be prepared, or maybe they're already in a position where they're having to pivot. I think you hit on a really good thing there, that, while we're certainly going to be putting out a lot of content here soon about, how to find a job as somebody over 50, I really do like the idea of, undoubtedly, you have millennials in your life who are professionals, or Gen Zers, or whatever, Gen Xers even.
Right.
Who, especially given this downtime, you can communicate with and say, hey, what do you think I need to be up to? What do I need to be up to speed on? Where are my gaps? Especially somebody who you might work with. Now, in my other business, I work with millennials, and we talk. If I can mentor them in terms of the ways of the world and the ways of business, and the experience of what we're doing together, they can mentor me too, in terms of understanding what I need to make sure that I'm up to date. And being up to date in terms of finding a job is one of the telltale signs that hiring managers or HR people are always looking at. They'll go to your LinkedIn page, and if it's garbage, that shows you're not up to speed. You're not being up to date, because that's what you have to do to be up to date. They will certainly, in interviews and everything, they'll look at how you dress, not meaning you dress like a millennial, but you dress something that's appropriate for you in that. And then also, there was I'll pause in mid-sentence there. There was an article on We Are Ages, David Stewart wrote, that said very often it's not ageism, but after talking to a number of HR hiring managers, they said that many people over 50 were just out of touch, out of date. They didn't have very much self-awareness. They weren't kind of addressing the new workplace dynamics and things of that sort. This is a good time to do that kind of assessment and make sure that you're up to speed.
Well, it's not ageism. What it is apathy. Totally.
On our part.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We think we went to school and that's all we needed, years ago. And there's no need to do this lifelong learning stuff is for everybody else but me. No. The world is changing so quickly and so rapidly that you have to keep up with it. My wife and I actually created one of these millennials, and we got to watch him in his natural habitat, and we learned a great deal from him. All right, and we were fortunate that he was there to train us and teach us, and because of that, what drives millennials crazy is when a baby boomer doesn't get it. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by doesn't get it, they speak sometimes in half sentences or phrases or certain words or attitudes. And we tend to be more of pontificators, and that drives them crazy. So what you have to understand is that when you apply for a job today, you are going through the millennial screen completely almost, if not through the bot screen. And the big thing when you try to you try to get yourself into a company is the first thing you have to understand is your resume is going to a robot or a bot. So you have to have certain keywords in your resume that the bot recognizes and will pass you on. But above that, what you have to do is fit is very important today. And the way in which you see if you fit is get a feel for the culture of the company that you're applying to. And the way you find out about the culture is you go on their website, you see how they project things, you see how they write things. You get a feeling of, is this a place where I could fit in? Then you go to other places like Glassdoor, you go to Facebook, you go to especially YouTube, because they'll have a number of videos there from a number of people. And if you're lucky enough, the hiring manager that would hire you may be on YouTube, and you get a feel for what they're like.
Or through, or you can find out who they are, like through
That's right.
Glassdoor, or through a LinkedIn search, because LinkedIn is not only an incredible resource, but also the up-to-date factor that I was talking about to make sure your profile is up to date.
No, there's no question about that. And beyond that, really, if you really want to work for a company, you go through a couple different stages. And the most important stage is when you become a detective. When you find out more about the company than the person screening you will know. And the big thing is that when you go talk to people in the company, it feels to them like you're already there. And that takes a lot of work. And it isn't one of these things where you sit and you wait to be asked questions and then you give answers. Nope. You got to go. You got to sell. You got to put yourself. You got to put yourself forward, and you got to make sure that you show the people the energy level that you have is absolutely the same or better than theirs, because it's all about value today.
Value.
If you can show that you bring value, then you will get hired no matter what your age is.
And by the way, if you've done your homework and you are going in there with the intention of proving your value, I mean, for instance, with an interview, it's not being passive. It's asking the interviewer questions, which does two things. One, it helps you identify what that person's particular concerns are. And then conversely, you're able to respond, and you can kind of be a little bit like we see politicians, where somebody asks them a question, you know, what's your favorite color? But they suddenly talk about, you know, it's really important how with climate change, you can be a little bit better than that. But the point is that you're able to work in the things that you want to do that expresses what your value is, and especially the fact that you're up to date. And because one of the things in David Stewart's article was that, and I love this characterization, was that a hiring manager was saying, look, in a way, I'm running a dating service. I'm trying to match a new hire, you know, to fit in well with a group. And so it's not just about skills and qualifications. It's also about who you are. I want to transition here for a second, because we're coming up with a list here. And again, keeping this in mind, the context that we're, I guess, unfortunately, still in the early stages of this pandemic. But the ultimate point we're making here is that you're going to have some extra downtime. I posted a video blog on this yesterday on LinkedIn, Facebook, and on ProBoomer, saying, you know, because we aren't going out to restaurants and with friends and to movies and things of that sort, you've got extra time on your hands. What are you going to do with it? So the list that we're having is that make sure that you're up to date in terms of the way that you're representing yourself, for instance, on LinkedIn, that you're up to date with what's going on in the world and what you need to be, especially, well, whether it's to find a job or keep your job, that you are aligned with the modern day times. And let's now get to talking about the gig economy, which I've been doing the gig economy since 1989. So being self-employed, basically a contract worker, even though I've had ongoing clients, and with a few clients, half the people at those companies think that I'm actually an employee because I do so much work with them, but I'm a 1099. They pay me as an LLC. Freelancers are gig workers, contractors where you're hired maybe for a set amount of time, and the money can be really good. One of my sons is a contractor in Denver, and he loves it because it also gives him flexibility. The companies love it, working with these freelancers, contractors, gig workers, and what's also called crowd workers, because they can just bring them in for certain projects, and they don't have to go through the hiring process, and they don't have to add 30% to that salary-ish to pay for benefits and things of that sort. It would seem that was already exploding, gig workers. 35%, I understand, of gig workers are people over 50, so it's not just for millennials at all. And in fact, the trend is supposed to go up. So it would also seem that gig working, given our current and future circumstances, may be a huge opportunity and, quite frankly, at least a plan B option.
Well, not only that, but it really falls right in line with succession planning in most companies.
How so?
So if you're a senior executive and you're thinking about moving on and kind of leaving the corporate world, you should really talk to your company about a phased retirement.
But not just an executive. This could also be somebody at a much lower level, correct?
It could be anybody, because no matter what the level is, you have people who are experts in their own little category.
Right.
And they are people that want to stay tethered to the company, because a lot of their self-worth, a lot of their purpose, a lot of their self-image comes from the work that they do. And they don't really want to give that up. And and they need the money. 45% of all baby boomers today have almost no retirement savings in the bank. Mm-hmm. And 55% of baby boomers have less than $10,000 in the bank. So they have to work. They want to work. They have, as a lot of friends of mine say, I have no choice. I must work. So a smart thing to do, if you and the company get along well and you like the work that you do, is to basically put together a program of phased retirement or phased moving, so that they know that you're available to do certain project work when they need it. I mean, I can tell you about that. There's one fellow that I worked with in the hotel business for years. He's 77 years old now. And what he does is, every time a hotel company, he works for a couple of hotel companies, every time they take over a new hotel, they usually change out the general managers. And he goes in the interim period and runs the hotel for them. He does it for about 13, 14 weeks, and then the replacement GM starts. So it's things like that. You have to get creative, and you have to look for where the opportunity is. In fact, you have to even bring to the company's attention where the opportunity is. And that's just not for boomers. It can also be for any age group.
Right.
That when you see where things are going, PricewaterhouseCoopers did a very interesting study about 3 years ago. It's called The World of Work 2025. And what they predict is that there'll be a core group of people that will run the company and be full-time employees. And then the next circle outside of that will be more or less 30 to 40 week people that will come in to do specific jobs but just that job, and it'll be project work. And then there'll be a larger circle, the third circle, and those will be people that are drawn in as part of the alumni association from time to time, to, like, say you have somebody who has to go out on maternity leave. They come in and they take the place of that person for that 12 or 16 week period of time. Say somebody quits unexpectedly. They come in, they take that person's place. And guess what? They're paid exactly what that person was paid. And that's okay with them. See, one of the big stigmas right now in corporate life is that it is just assumed that if somebody's making X dollars, in order to keep them employed with the company, they have to make that or more. That is not the case. The boomers or even some millennials would be very happy at certain salaries to take a little less for the ability to have a flow of work. Because when you go off to be a gig worker, your whole thing is you have to set things up so that there's a flow. As a matter of fact,
and maybe handling, and maybe because you're doing gig work for several people, you're juggling multiple projects, but
exactly.
you might be co-located, just to edify for people, you might be co-located, or with some contractors, it's kind of like you can go in or you don't have to go in, or you're very often working from home more, of course, nowadays and for the foreseeable future. That's going to be the way that it is anyway.
Right.
So if you remember the Ed Sullivan Show and the plate spinners, you learn how to spin 2 plates. I learned how to spin
Paul,
15 plates at once.
I told you, don't date yourself.
Oh, I saw that somebody showed me some retro video on YouTube. Okay, anyway.
Plate spinners, please.
Yeah, I said, what is that? Anyway, all right, so let's we're going to keep having this conversation, and on Pro Boomer, we have other people set up. Chris Farrell from Marketplace and NextAvenue, economics background, looking at what's going on here from that perspective. Bob Laura from Retirement Coaches Association, who's also a financial planner. We're going to be talking with him. I've got a whole roster of people.
Bob Laura, he is an absolute example of a modern gig worker.
Yes.
I mean, he runs a national association. He has a financial planning business. He has a retirement coaching business. He's also a writer for Forbes.com. So he does a number of different things.
And he's a father and a husband and a pretty good golfer. So
that's very debatable.
Okay, so
we'll get to that later.
Let's wrap up what we have here. Again, this is the first week that we're doing this. Bob's going to be back on. I'm sure next week we'll have you on again to just keep progressing this. Here's what I've basically heard. The bottom line of what we've heard here today, and chime in at the end, is that number one, if you're furloughed or you're feared that you're losing your job, don't necessarily think that you have to look for that exact same kind of job. There are a multitude of programs, free training, government subsidized training through a multitude of channels, including universities and community colleges and adult education. So start looking into that, even if you haven't lost your job yet, because who knows where this is going to go. Point number two is that I lost point number two, which was tied to that. Oh, healthcare is absolutely one sector where there's going to be nothing but growth, and not just because of the coronavirus. It was already that way. Start making sure that you're up to date in the multitude of different ways that you need to be up to date, whether it's, are you fitting into the modern workplace? Is your LinkedIn really up to date? Are you reflecting that you are willing to change and adapt to the way of the changing workplace, which don't blame it just on millennials. It is just the way that it's organically changing. A lot of what the millennials have changed about the workplace, I think are much, much better. So let's not just automatically denigrate it as old fogies. And then also making sure that you are up, and I think this is a big thing, and I'm going to make a note of it. We're going to talk about this next week. We touched on it briefly, making sure that your skills are continually progressing. In fact, if your skills are up to date, you're already behind. You got to be staying ahead of the curve. You want to add anything to that real quickly?
Yeah, number one, be a detective. Number two, be fearless. And number three, don't let anybody tell you you can't do something, because once you go in with that kind of attitude and that kind of insight, you will absolutely be successful.
Fantastic. Thank you, Bob. So follow, the easiest thing to do is go to ProBoomer.com and subscribe. You'll get weekly and regular emails. You won't get any spam, and that way you'll stay on top of what we're putting out, especially given this current situation. Also follow us on Facebook at ProBoomers on Facebook, and Paul Long on LinkedIn. Bob, we'll be doing another one of these in the next few days. Thanks.